in one moment that we're going to have to edit out. Bear with me.
We're not editing that.
No.
Someone's got to edit it, though, because my Discord's having a heart attack.
Oh no, I'm the editor. This is going to be terrible.
Oh, it's fine. It'll just be... Well, mark a timestamp down.
No, this is fine. It's peek behind the curtain. Also, this is basically like this is Travis's phone number for us because he's one of the only people who uses it. So I love that he's called in like 3 times.
But we're gonna edit it out, though, right?
Sure.
Okay. Lie to me, Nick. Okay, here we go.
Are you playing it?
Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Mythos Busters, where we are officially Coitus and con ended up easier to combine when I did it in my head.
Contis?
Yeah, there we go. We're post-Contis. No, abandoned ship.
Gosh. Keep going. I'm Nick.
I'm Scott.
Good to have you.
And I'm Ian. That's the train wreck.
All right, thanks, boys, for pulling me out of that nosedive. And I'm Sean. We've got tonight our post-GenCon episode, which is always amazing and exciting. And by always, I mean this is our first one, so hopefully it'll be amazing and exciting. So we've got on our show our kind of standard news. We're going to talk a little bit about... we've got our main discussion topic, I suppose we should go right to. Our voicemail. We're going to talk about underpowered, or as the as the more politically correct nomenclature might be, investigators with a little bit of room to grow. And then we're going to hop into probably what's going to be our longest Tentacle Time to date. If you have no interest in hearing about GenCon, don't worry. We're going to save all that talk for the end, including our non-spoilery impressions of Labyrinths of Lunacy, because we've played it, and it was amazing. So, Nick, what's going on in the community?
What's going on with the community? Well, for this episode, since I recently started what I've been calling my legacy campaign, where I take one deck and run it through all the scenarios released so far, I found a house rule on Board Game Geek that posits a little more structured way to do such a thing. So what I was going to do was I was just going to start with the Corset campaign on easy, and then move into Dunwich on standard, and then eventually to Carcosa on hard, but then I didn't think much further than that. The poster on Board Game Geek who goes by... Right, yeah, exactly. I don't have much to go off of. But this poster, who goes by the handle Banana on Board Game Geek... Banania, yeah.
Is it Banania? Oh, yeah, we know him from Lord of the Rings. He does good work.
Yeah, I was going to talk about how he also links it back to Lord of the Rings as well, but he has come up with a basic outline for how to structure the continuous campaign in Arkham, so playing through multiple campaigns with the same deck and how to handle that. Mostly it's exactly what you would expect. You carry over the same deck with all the story assets and trauma and weaknesses from one campaign to the next. But the difference is that he's added in some slight rules to allow you to purchase off your trauma and weaknesses by spending experience points. So basically you can spend 5 experience to get rid of a mental or physical trauma, and you can spend 10 experience to remove one of the weaknesses that you've acquired throughout the campaign. Now the trick is that your deck still has to maintain the weakness ratio that the rules supply for like a standalone. So if you have 3 new weaknesses in your deck and your deck has a total of 18 experience, you can't actually remove any because according to the rules guide, that's the number of weaknesses to balance out the 10 to 19 experience bracket. It's very interesting to see that, you know, he went to the length of coming up with these experience costs. I haven't tried it. He said that he's played it for a few games and really enjoys it. He thinks that it works out those costs. I'm a little on the fence about buying off trauma, but then again, as a roll-into player, I'm also very excited about buying off trauma. So, but yeah, I think that I might actually try this for my legacy campaign.
Well, one thing you do have experience with, though, Nick, I happen to know for a fact, is playing standalone at a very high experience count. So I will be interested to see kind of between those experiences how you feel the balance sits with experience to weaknesses and all that sort of thing.
Yes, I can say with certainty now that 49 experience with Roland specifically is not nearly as scary as you would think. So it'll be interesting to take that knowledge and then apply it to something like this.
More to come on that during our Labyrinths of Lunacy talk. All right. Has anyone on that post commented about trying it yet? Or, I mean, do you feel that's kind of appropriately costed for everything?
I think it's, for the most part, appropriately costed. I think it makes sense to have weaknesses cost more than trauma, like to actually remove the weakness from your deck, because that's ultimately it's altering your deck makeup, whereas the trauma is something that is, as we've seen through scenarios, can be easily added through card effects, not only from defeat. So I think it's appropriately costed. As far as if people have used, there's only 6 or 7 replies to his post. And most of them, it looks like everyone is pretty much saying that they're excited to try it, but no one has actually tried it as of yet.
Turns out ideas are cheap. Execution is where the value's at.
Exactly. Well, and to really test this, you'd have to go through at a minimum of, 4 scenarios? Right. So, yeah, it might be a while.
I was actually thinking of the whole trauma thing and a continuous campaign about this, like, last week, I think, while you guys were at GenCon, just postulating in my head. And I thought of, like, what about a neutral permanent that is 5 XP and basically has 3 action arrows? So you have to do all 3, basically spend a turn, exile this, heal a horror, or heal a trauma. It costs 5 XP, but you have to give up a turn in a game.
Is it permanent? So do I start with it in place so I can use it at any time?
But you have to exile it, so you have to rebuy it every time.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I imagine if we ever get an officially supported version of this, something like that is how it's going to look.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I don't like the idea of spending... I would rather just have an in-between scenario purchase do it, rather than have a card that I have to actually use in-game to get rid of a trauma. But that's just me personally. But obviously, without having played that, I can't say 100%. But I think that's interesting. I think that'd be very cool to see something in game that addresses removing trauma rather than just stacking it on my character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually, like, I've been more and more intrigued by an idea in my head over time. Like, it'd be very cool if there was a story way of doing it, like a scenario where you can actually go through it to try to remove trauma. With the danger of potentially getting more trauma if you fail that scenario. So it'd be a cool risk reward.
Go to a hospital.
Yeah, that would be a very enticing reason to do a specific side quest at a given time in a campaign.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say, there's multiple RPGs, but there's one of them specifically that I'm thinking of about superheroes that each superhero character has like dependents. I think it might have been wild talents, but I might be wrong. But anyway, like you had willpower, which was a spendable resource in that RPG, and you could build that back up by spending time with your dependents, which was really interesting. And that'd be cool if we saw something like that.
Oh, where like eventually children.
Well, dependents, like these are the people that rely on you because you're a hero. You know what I mean? Gotcha. So in Arkham, it could be whatever anchors Roland to the world, like whatever he sees as like his constant, something that keeps him from completely slipping into insanity, which it turns out is just Brother Xavier.
I was going to say, based on his story, I would have said it was like his filing cabinet.
Sure, yeah. Like maybe if you spend a turn going through Roland's filing cabinet.
Goddamn paperwork.
Right. So.
Yeah, it was funny because at first in my head I was like, okay, what if there's like a separate standalone for each investigator? Like, okay, that'd be cool for Roland. He's like solving crimes. And then I'm like, wait, Agnes, it's like all of a sudden it's like a restaurant simulator where you have to deliver the right meals to the right tables.
You have to combine assets in the right order to make the break properly.
Oh, jeez.
and if you screw up, you take a horror and accidentally kill a customer.
Yeah, when you get the complaining customer, it's like, do you want a parley or do you want to just shrivel them? I think I'd pick shrivel every time, having worked in customer service.
Awesome. All right, well, cool. I'm interested to see where that goes. And hey, any of you custom scenario creators out there, if you want to steal that whole the carrot at the end of the stick of this scenario is removing trauma idea, go for it. All right. Well, I think we had some news, didn't we, Ian?
We did. So just before Gen Con, we had the final Carcosa Investigator Spoiled and Bury Them Deep. Was the title of the article. And this is William York. So I'll have Scott read this as our resident survivor.
Oh, thank you. I think the second favorite Carcosa guy I'm looking to play. First one being Lola, because that's just crazy. William York, the Gravedigger. He is a warden. He's got 3 willpower, 2 intellect, 4 combat, and 3 agility. He has the reaction: after you defeat an enemy, play an asset from your discard pile, paying its costs, limit once per round. Elder Sign effect is +2. If this test is successful, return 1 card from your discard pile to your hand. He's got 8 health and 6 sanity. And his deck building is 0 to 5 neutral, 0 to 5 survivor, and 0 to 2 guardian.
Very nice. He's got access to some of the best assets in the game.
He gonna kill somebody.
Yeah. He's definitely the most fighty of survivors. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With the guardian access.
Oh, man. Can you imagine York with Duke?
Oh, God.
Nope.
In my fan fiction. Although with his ability to play, recurrent asset, maybe a better companion for him is Stray Cat.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Stray Cat's good. And a lot of chat when this guy came out on our Discord. Knife works in him. Like, Knife is an okay card.
Yep.
Because it's a 1-cost asset. You're throwing it. It's going to give you +2
and a
fight
damage.
or combat and a damage.
Yep.
And then when that knife kills it, you walk over to the guy, yank it out of his skull, and put it back in play. Like, it's, yeah.
Well, you got us, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yep. The knife era begins.
So here we're talking about trying to come up with a scavenging build that used knife effectively, and here it just turns out you need the investigator to have scavenging on him.
Yeah.
Yo, it's like, I thought it was like scavenging. When I first read this guy, I read play an item asset from your discard pile. But it's like...
Oh, yeah!
Right?
So you
It's
could be
so
playing
much better than
your
that.
skill, your weird, like,
Stray Cat.
mercenary buff ones and all that. Or Stray Cat. Yeah, you could just run Pet Cemetery and play Stray Cat over and over again.
Yeah, the Pet Cemetery build. Yeah, because you can have the guard dog, and that's a good one to recur, and then your Stray Cat.
Well, I know what I'm building when we get offline.
I do want to say that I really like how we're seeing stats that originally were attributed to a specific class now kind of be a little more freeform with Carcosa. So like William, like we talked about, he has the high combat, he has the high health, low sanity, and then also the highest sanity in this Rogue, which is really nice to see that it's not always stuck to Seeker. So it's cool that we're kind of bridging those gaps a little bit.
His Elder Sign is good too, that you can return any card from your discard pile, so that feel when you get a lucky back. Oh, yeah. One of the most satisfying feelings in existence.
I really hope we continue to see the additional effect, Elder Sign effects, because they're the ones that you're actually okay with. Because whoever pulls an Elder Sign when you're fighting the boss enemy? That never happens. You pull Elder Sign when you're already 3 up on an investigate test to get 1 goddamn clue.
Yep.
Oh, I succeeded by 10.
Well, that's like that conversation we had about Elder Sign things. Like, Skids is always just good, right? Because you just get 2 money. It always fires. This is another one where it's like, oh, sweet, I can just get something for free.
And he happened to... They spoiled in the same article a couple of new Survivor cards that are going to work very well with his ability. And these are coming out in Carcosa as well. Oh, yeah. We skipped over signature cards. Yeah. Bury Them Deep is a really cool one. Sean, why don't you read that one?
Sure thing. Bury Them Deep is somewhere on this page.
Keep going down.
There he is.
You gotta dig deep to find it.
We gotta dig a little deep. Bury Them Deep is a level null because it's a signature card. It's costs 0. It has a Willpower, Combat, and Wild Pip. It has the Task trait in William Yorick deck only. Fast. Play after a non-elite enemy at your location is defeated. Does not have to be defeated by you, FYI. Add that enemy and this card to the victory display. And it has Victory 1.
Cool.
So, that's amazing. Because occasionally when you play this game, a non-elite enemy is going to get defeated at your location. Like, you could be playing Wendy and that's going to happen.
And it turns out victory points are kind of okay in this game, so getting more of them is good. But and the other cool part is it also potentially gets rid of an annoying enemy so it doesn't cycle through again.
Yep, and some of those, if you're playing high player counts and you're playing some of those really tight encounter decks, just like getting one stupid Whippoorwill or Night Gaunt out of circulation. Oh, so nice. I like it.
You can also deal with other people's basic weakness too.
Oh, totally
right?
good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If they're about to reshuffle.
And his weakness, not surprisingly at all, is an enemy. Nick, you can read Graveyard Ghouls.
Sure. Graveyard Ghouls is William Yorick's weakness. They have 3 fight, 3 health, and 2 evade. They are a humanoid monster ghoul traded enemy. Prey William Yorick only. They have Hunter. And while Graveyard Ghouls is engaged with you, cards cannot leave your discard pile. They deal 1 damage and 1 horror. And for those of you who are familiar with the art of this card, I love that the bottom left ghoul looks like he's just giving that skeleton a nice big hug. Just like, this one's mine.
My precious.
And I will call him George, and I will love him and pet him.
I love that we see a monster as a signature weakness for a character.
Yeah.
And I also love that this is one that you can bury deep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is the first signature monster, right? Monster weakness?
I believe that to be true.
Yeah. I remember thinking before when I first saw this article that like having a monster enemy is not a big deal for Yorick, and like having that as a signature weakness is fine because he wants to kill enemies, and I still think that's broadly true, but you can get, as I've experienced, get screwed by it when you're all set up to take on some big boss enemy and then this pops out at the same time.
That's a bummer.
So timing, like with any weakness, is a thing. But in general, I think it's not the worst weakness in the world for someone who wants to.
I think he's pretty well equipped to deal with it, especially considering some of the Guardian cards that we've specifically, if it bleeds and Monster Slayer and stuff like that that are specifically tuned for monsters and enemies that are in Guardian, and he can take that now. So I think he's better equipped to straight up deal with his weakness than some of the other investigators.
Yeah, especially with his even health and or almost even health and sanity spread. It's not like this guy's got a weakness to pick on.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think this one's actually, as far as weaknesses go, pretty gentle. Though I haven't played with him yet, so.
So I'll throw this in here, and I know I'm going to talk about rules a little bit later with Yorick with his special ability, but with the ability on the Graveyard Ghouls, when your cards can't leave your discard pile, if he's engaged with you and you have 0 cards in your deck and you go to draw, what do you think happens?
Oh man, do you just loop into insanity?
Keep adding more.
So
all right, take a horror. Nope, can't leave. Take a horror. Nope, can't leave. Take a horror.
So the general consensus, and I don't think we haven't received a reply from Matt yet on this, but basically you go to reshuffle your discard pile into your deck, but the cards can't leave there. And the way it's written in the rules reference guide is, after you've reshuffled them and drawn your card, then you take your sanity or your horror.
Okay.
So because that can't happen, you just pat the table where your deck would be and yearn for a card. So.
Oh, I kind of liked the infinite loop of horror.
I do like a fewer infinite loops in my card games, although fun stories they do make.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Few and far between is probably better.
The hypochondria and what's the other weakness where it just... Oh, that one was great.
Hypochondria and... Oh, shoot, what is the other one?
I'm drawing a blank, too.
Wow, why can't I remember that? Oh no, it's all right, never mind.
It's gone.
We'll figure it out at some point.
We'll find it later.
It's a riveting discussion.
Discord, help us.
Anyone. So the first of the new Survivor cards that both happen to work very well with York. The first is Lantern, which is a 2-cost asset, intellect pip, item, and a tool. Has 2 actions on it. The first one is an investigate action. Your location gets -1 shroud for this investigation because you're holding up a light. The second action is to discard the lantern to deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity because lanterns are also good for catching stuff on fire.
This seems pretty good.
I think it seems good with Yorick, but I don't know if it has a place in like Ashcan or even Wendy.
See, I think Wendy actually it does because you could help like if you're maybe if you're playing like that dodge tank build we always talk about maybe having, but if you're playing like a super evadey Wendy, you don't want to waste a lot of your actions like evading rats day and night. So this would be something to just like discard your lantern, kill that rat, move on with your day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that, it gets better in multiplayer as well. Because in multiplayer,
I'd agree
there's going to be more opportunities where 1 damage will off an enemy.
Mm-hmm. I think I could see this in a scavenging Wendy build, but if I did any other kind of Wendy, I probably maybe would do 1, but eventually cut it. As someone who doesn't play Wendy that often, that's my consensus.
I look forward to trying
Conjecture.
I mean, it potentially might be interesting. Like, I ran Dark Horse Windy, so then you're bumping your intellect up by 1, and then this is essentially like a +1 intellect bump. Like, by that point, you're doing some work.
It's always better to reduce the shroud, though, because if you ever hit 0, then you're in the money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Especially all those 1 shroud locations out there.
They exist. There's dozens of them.
Yeah, all those locations that you actually have clues on to investigate. Yeah,
there we go.
So the second one is no Gravediggers complete without their shovel. So this is the Gravedigger's shovel. Scott, you can take this one.
Yeah, it's a 2-cost asset, Gravedigger shovel. It has a combat or a fight pip. No combat pip. Item, tool, weapon, melee. Action, fight. You get +2 combat for this attack. Or action, discard Gravedigger shovel, discover a clue at your location. It takes up a hand slot.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday! See your Gravedigger shovel, get a clue at the location!
I love how the lantern and the Gravedigger's shovel are like the exact opposites of each other.
Yeah.
The lantern helps with investigate but can do damage, and the Gravedigger shovel helps with combat but can get a clue. Like that's interesting.
The flexibility is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's obviously super good for York because he needs help getting clues. He needs and he can recycle it obviously. So it's super good for him.
I was about to say, does anyone ever take baseball bat again? But baseball bat does extra damage, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Okay. All right, so it's safe for now.
Yeah. This is a good one for, I mean, just keeping those smaller enemies at bay, I guess. But, I mean, you can combine, like, if you're looking at Yorick, you've got Vicious Blow.
Mm-hmm.
So, to add the damage there, but I do like just discarding a clue. Or discarding to get a clue, especially those super high shroud locations.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's good. Working a hunches, too, as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the difference here is that one is fast, obviously, so you're kind of spending the action, and but I still like auto clue grabbing. I think especially if you're one of those masochists who likes higher difficulty settings, this is probably a good one.
Just about to say, if you're in harder expert, this is a godsend.
Yes.
Yeah. Just avoid the chaos bag altogether.
Yeah.
The difference too between something like an event that grabs a clue and this is you can play this on turn 1 and not use it until turn 8 when you need it, right? Whereas if you have, I guess the other ones have fast or whatever, but you're paying the cost up front and then you can just, it's kind of like a shovel in your pocket for when you need it.
Pocket shovel.
That's where pocket sand comes from. Some asshole forgot to take it out of his shovel.
For clues that aren't buried that deep, grab your pocket shovel.
I think that about says it all about Great Shovel.
And with that riff,
so our other article, I'm not going to say too much about because it was basically just delving more into the first Mythos backpack of the next cycle, which is Echoes of the Past, and just kind of covers the fact that it seems like it has a cool mechanic where there are some cultists also in the Historical Society, which is not a shocker because cultists are plenty in this game. But the interesting new thing is that instead of Doom getting added normally during the Mythos phase, they're kind of going to be the cultists are going to be trying to find their own clues. And when they find clues, that's going to be adding Doom and advancing stuff. So it's kind of like rival teams of investigators almost. Yeah, exactly. So that sounds like it should be fun.
Yeah.
did we get any spoilers from that one?
We did. There's some encounter cards. I think the really interesting one is actually this asset, the Tattered Cloak. So, Sean, why don't you read that one since you were asking?
The Tattered Cloak, which has the subtitle Regalia, Dementia, is a null assetted card. I assume you get this through story means. It's 2 cost, has willpower, combat, and agility pips. Item and clothing traded. You get -1 sanity. However, you get +1 will, +1 combat, and +1 agility while you have 3 or fewer sanity remaining. And then it has 1 health and takes up the body slot.
Huh.
Talking about
That's
riding
it.
the razor's edge.
Yeah.
I'm put on the tattered cloak. Bum, ba, bum.
I like
think
how it buffs everything except for intellect. Like,
Yeah.
that's so
No-
thematically appropriate.
No smart person would.
I like this in Ashcan, actually. A lot of these, if you have 3 or fewer remaining sanity ideas, if you just put your sanity on Ashcan and then kind of leave Pete as your soak, you can get down to 3 or fewer remaining sanity and still have 3 in in Duke.
And Peter Sylvester.
Yeah.
I won't be putting this in my rolling deck. 4 is just a little too close.
Yeah,
So
but
if
then
you
you
have a
only have to
sanity-
take 1 to turn it on.
Yeah,
Only the
that's
one
going to
deck.
happen like immediately.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems interesting.
Yeah.
I will be interested to see which investigators play well with it.
This definitely nails that temptation of power thing. Almost even better than the Necronomicon. This is so like, are you willing to take that risk? And I do like we're getting more clothing in the game to use up that body slot. So
Yeah.
more choices are always good. There's a couple of encounter cards spoilers, but do we want to go through those or just plow ahead?
I want to plow ahead. I
I do as well. I think we'll see
Everything-
them soon enough.
everything about this episode until we get to Tentacle Time is just an obstacle to Tentacle Time. Okay, so
Yeah,
that
that's-
being said, yeah, Nick knows I'm right. Of course, that's every episode for Nick. Wow, thanks for letting that one hang there. That was super
Can you
awkward.
guys...
I stand with Nick.
We met our quota for the episode. Everything else is just gravy from here on in.
All right, so before we get to the main topic, Scott, let's hear about those rules you were talking about.
So William York's ability is super awesome. Right after you defeat an enemy, play an asset from your discard pile, paying its cost, whatever. So a lot of questions came up because you can splash Guardian. What about Beat Cop and Guard Dog? And how do all these things work with his ability? So, for instance, Beat Cop, we'll start with the level 0-1. You discard him to deal a damage to an enemy. If that damage kills the enemy, do you get Beat Cop back? And the answer is yes, because basically the action of discarding Beat Cop is before the colon in the sentence. And so he hits the graveyard, your discard pile, you deal the damage, the enemy gets defeated, you can bring back Beat Cop. If you have Guard Dog, it doesn't work because if the enemy attacks and the damage lands on Guard Dog and he does the damage back, because it says when an enemy attack deals damage to Guard Dog before the colon, when is before it actually happens. So the Guard Dog kills the bad guy, he dies, then Guard Dog dies.
Whew. Oh.
Yeah.
I love it when you talk nested sequences to me.
Yeah. It's a very complicated ruling, kind of. It has a lot to do with like discard this. Is this happening before the colon? Is it when or after or all this stuff? So I kind of compiled a quick list of cards that work and don't work. So there's knife, and if you discard the knife and it kills the bad guy, you can get the knife back. Lantern, if that one damage that we just talked about, if it kills the guy, you can get Lantern back. It'll be in your discard pile by the time the ability is able to trigger. Stuff in your skill icons you chuck. Like if you chuck assets to up your fight for the fight, then those will not be in your discard pile by the time the enemy dies.
Yeah, because
They're
committed
still-
cards hang in limbo until the very end of resolution.
Yeah. Baseball bat, if you draw a skull or a tentacle symbol, because it says if it's revealed during the attack, discard baseball bat after the attack resolves. The enemy will die first. Baseball bat then goes into your yard, and you can't grab it back. Aquina, you can get back. Beat cop 0 and 2. You can get back. Brother Xavier, you can get back.
Wow.
So it's guard. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
You're
Study those timing charts, kids.
Yeah. And there was another one with like guard dog. Like if the enemy attacked and hit guard dog, but then guard dog threw damage back at the enemy, but then the enemy has a triggered effect when it dies if it made you discard an asset.
Oh, God.
Like it was like
Wait, hang on. Does any enemy do that? I suppose the conglomeration is possible, right?
That only discards melee weapons,
yeah, no, I think we were just hypothesizing like
like the anti-guard dog.
Well, we were trying to see like how far into the stack of nested effects we could go. And what
We gotta go one more level, Scott. We need the kick.
But then you're going to end up in limbo.
Yeah.
Put my head on a train track.
Yep, exactly.
Join us in the rules discussion on Discord because that's all we talk about. So, yeah.
It's as invigorating as it sounds.
Yeah. So
They just
hopefully
have
that
that.
clears up the orc for people.
They just have that loud Inception music on in a loop in the channel the whole time.
I will say that the words guard dog hold no meaning for me anymore after that discussion.
Yeah.
They're just null words now.
Guard dog, guard dog, guard dog, guard dog.
Guard dog.
Yep.
Yeah, there was a little boo-boo in the Yorick spoiler article along those lines that they gave an example of one use for him is committing a skill card and then grabbing it right back, which, as you pointed out, is not true. So don't always rely on those articles for correct rulings.
Yeah.
I
A lot
think
of the
I
articles.
can hear Matt facepalming.
Yeah.
You think Matt had to rule on that yet?
Yeah.
Never know.
One of our listeners and guy on our Discord here, BD Flory, he basically compiled a giant list of questions since the Path to Carcosa spoilers came out, like from when it was spoiled like 6 months ago. And he compiled all these rule questions, and I guess he just sent a giant email to Matt. With,
Oh, no.
Because they won't answer questions until it's released or whatever. So he's like, okay.
Oh man, I can see poor Matt just sitting at his office at his freaking desk one day, nestling into his coffee, and he opens up his email and he sees that and it's just like
And these aren't questions like, hey, so what happens when I fail this test? Oh, this happens. It's like complicated us thinking for weeks and weeks on weird scenarios that can come up.
God, you nerds.
So, I know. I love
Nerds.
rules. Rules. All right, that's it.
All right, awesome. Well, wow, all this talk about Yorick. Are there other investigators in this game?
There's non-Yorick investigators.
Oh wow.
There's Yorick
Good to
and
know.
non-Yorick.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Lola can pretend to be Yorick.
That's true.
All right, so let's move on to our main topic tonight. And this comes to us courtesy of listener Travis, who called into the Mythos Busters hotline. So let's take a listen to his question.
Hey, Mythos Busters. This is Travis again from Salt Lake City. Just calling back. I'm actually surprised more people haven't taken advantage of calling in. I think it's a pretty cool idea. But, yeah, I just wanted to maybe start a quick discussion topic today. I was just thinking about some of the more less popular or undervalued investigators that we have, and just wanted to get your thoughts on which ones you feel you're most excited to see develop further, or which ones you think have a lot of potential to be much better than they currently are. And as I think about this, I think that Jim Culver has the chance to become a very, very good investigator. I think doesn't get a lot of love right now, especially compared to Agnes, and she is great. But I think Jim Culver has a chance to be very, very good. He's got a great signature asset with his trumpet. It's very powerful. And then his ability to bring consistency to the chaos band, for skill tests, I think can't be undersold. But yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on some of the more, maybe less popular investigators, which ones you're excited to see develop more, or which ones you think have a lot of potential to be much better than they currently are. So, all right, guys, as always, thanks for your hard work. You guys are great. Love the content, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.
My favorite part of that call was how he's like, well, I really like Jim. Yeah, I know Agnes is cool. Just calm down a second. Like he's having an actual conversation with me. So, I thought that was a really cool question. Kind of talking about the growth potential for current investigators. So, I guess my first question to you guys is probably a little bit more general and theoretical. When you pick an investigator and you say, okay, this person's going to do X when we get X, like what aspects are you looking at? What kind of identifies that sort of there's room to grow investigator? Does that question make sense? It made sense to me.
I think so.
You're saying what signifies to us that an investigator has room to grow?
There you go.
I would say if they're not doing particularly well currently, then I usually look for what cards would make them do well, So
for instance, one thing that I was thinking of kind of leading into this question was if they have tricks to do with a specific trait. Like, I feel like both Agnes and Daisy, we were saying straight out of the core set, like, yeah, Agnes is good, but when she gets more spells, she's going to get better. And same thing with Daisy and Tome. So that's one of my main things that I look at is if they're relying on a specific thing to exist and not a whole lot of it actually exists yet, like, there's definitely room for growth when we have more of those things that exist.
Right.
I think that's a good indicator, and I also think that possibly when an investigator can't quite do, I guess the big three things in the game are getting clues, killing bad guys, dealing with the encounter deck as far as like treacheries and stuff, right? And when a gator can't do those three things super effectively, I think they have room to grow into that. If you look at, I'm breaking the rule, Agnes, right? Like she can.
Oh, hang on, she's all right. Let's talk about Jim for a minute, though.
Okay, so Jim. So I think he's decent. I think he's a lot better in multiplayer. I wouldn't take him solo.
Yes.
I don't think.
No.
Sean, you said this a number of times. Like Jim with trumpet versus Jim without trumpet.
Yeah.
Incredible difference, right? So places for him to grow.
He becomes an actual bard at that point.
Yeah, like.
Okay.
So investigating, he's got Rite of Seeking to kind of help out, but he's also starting at 3 intellect anyways, which isn't bad. Combat, he's starting at 3. Like, I've put Machete in him and been fine. He has the shriveling option as well, and having 4 willpower, he's decent at holding the encounter deck in check, kind of. So to me, I don't know. Like, I think he's got tricks to develop, but I think as far as room to grow, I'm not sure I'd agree that he a lot.
Jim is he's not the star of the show. He's very much your defensive lineman. He's the guy that is getting the work done while someone else is stealing all the flair. Because he's fun to play, but he's a very specific kind of fun where you have to enjoy just being efficient and just being consistent. Because Jim is, especially with, like I've said before, like Carnival was an awesome scenario for Jim, and now we're learning with Carcosa that Jim, because of the number of skull tokens, like Jim enjoys that too, and he just straight up shuts down skull tokens. And the way his investigator is built is he's set up to be the guy who's just doing the work, and that sort of thing. So he's fun once you get your head around that.
Or Mega Bard if his trumpet comes out.
Sure.
Yeah. Nick, you're totally right though, right? Like he's the inconsistency with his ability to make skulls a zero. So you're looking at a chaos bag where 2 to 3 tokens are zeros for you, more so than anyone else. Like that's insane. So if you like math and statistics and committing certain cards to whatever, like it smooths out the difficulty for him. And he just goes around and just kind of jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, and I think if we get what will help him in the future is if we get more chaos bag manipulation stuff. Like we have grotesque statue, defiance can potentially be useful because the skull is already kind of null, so you could potentially X something else out for a crucial test. If we get more along those lines, I mean, I don't think they can push that too far because at a certain point you can't like just neutralize the chaos bag.
Right.
But he does have that, with a few just extra cards, he could just be, really on fire. I do think you guys nailed it that he's never going to get that big attention, and some of it is just psychological. Like you're not going to remember all those times you drew skulls and zeroed them out, but you are going to remember times you just got screwed by the encounter deck for whatever reason.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think because of what we're talking about, he definitely shines in the player game. Like, I've played him 2-player, and it was okay, but we had 2 generals. It was Jim and Jenny. It kind of worked out well, but it really felt like it was boring, man. Like, it was a boring campaign because we were both just generalists, and we're like, okay, I guess I'll go over here and do this thing, and I'll go over here and do this thing, and then, okay, I guess we'll switch roles and do what each other was just doing, but at different locations.
That sounds dirty. Yeah, no, and I will reinforce the point, I think. The trumpet, man. The trumpet makes such a difference. Yeah. I think, what's the new Seeker event we got that lets someone dig through 6 cards?
Yeah, I was going to mention it.
No stone unturned.
Yeah, like the more we get targeted retrieval and fetch, like I feel like if you focus that on Jim and then he gets his trumpet, maybe this effort's not worth all of it, but if he gets his trumpet more consistently, then definitely he becomes a new investigator. So if we ever get to that point where he can get his trumpet reliably by like turn 2 or 3, most games, he's a different investigator. He hops up just from that alone.
I actually, one of the more successful two-handed campaigns, like obviously Rex and Zoe through Dunwich was just like on fire, but I actually ran Roland and Jim, which was, I'd say, just behind them, which surprised me how well they did. There were a few close games, but that's to be expected. But I ran Roland as kind of combat, and Jim is like a Kluber substitute. So, of course, he's not like a Rex stand-in, but I was surprised how well he could fill that role because he already has the natural like intellect to do pretty well. So I'd like run deduction in there and magnifying glass. But then he also has the right of seeking to kind of do the faster like supplemental clue gathering. And then I think even with some of the Carcosa cards now, like Uncage the Soul lowers the cost of like Rite of Seeking for those spells, and even the more expensive leveled up version if you're playing in like 4-player. And Astral Travel, now he can move around faster.
Yeah.
To make up for not having access to something like Pathfinder that like a Seeker Kluber would have. So I don't know. I think he's already getting some pieces to be better.
And I think another piece, and this applies to all the Dunwich investigators, so like we were talking about earlier, the fact that they have access to level 0 cards of any class for the rest of the game. Like, if they need, at any given point, like their best build just needs X to get there, the Dunwich investigators are most likely to have access to X because they could pull it potentially from any class, as long as it's level 0. So I feel like that alone means, I think, as far as like room for growth goes, the Dunwich investigators are probably all head and shoulders above everyone else.
Yeah, it really does feel like the Dunwich Gators are operating on a different power level than Carcosa and Core Set. And even with some of the crazy deck building options we've seen with Carcosa, they're still not, for the most part, pulled from any class, other than Lola, obviously, but she has her own limitations. Like, the fact that any Dunwich investigator can pull from any class up to 5 cards is huge. Like, that changes the game entirely. So, yeah, and I think that's okay then, having an investigator like Jim, who's a little more vanilla on the surface, because he can shore that up.
Yeah, I'm continually surprised by how much those 5 cards make a difference.
Yeah.
By like just making a change, how it totally changes. I think because part of me is still stuck in the like higher deck counts of other LCGs, where like 5 out of 50 or 60 is like nothing, but 5 out of 30 is actually substantial. Like, yeah, you take the Seeker package in Jim, and all of a sudden he's like Kluver, or you change it up and throw in some Guardian cards, and he can fight. So
yeah, it really introduces the idea of like modules of cards to this game.
Yeah,
which really, outside of that ability to pull from anywhere, we don't really have. So moving from Jim, do you guys think Daisy is undervalued at this point, or let me posit the other option I see? Higher education has made it to the point where you go, what, is she yellow? Yeah, she's good.
Kind of.
Higher education is really, like, that's really helped elevate Daisy, but at the same time, I think that Seeker's gotten so many good tools, even aside from higher. She's to the point where, in my opinion, she's pretty strong even without higher education.
Again, is she yellow? Yep, she good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's just FFG card games.
Yeah,
Play the
true.
yellow cards.
Okay, so I'm assuming you guys wouldn't put her on the underappreciated list.
No.
Not anymore.
How about room for growth? I'm going to put her on the room for growth list just because of what I mentioned earlier. We have like 3 tomes in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
One of which she can't use.
Yeah, God. Although Matt got us again, I will willingly throw that in an Akachi deck.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, maybe not totally. Like, that might be third pick, but
Yes. Not immediately.
Right.
Well, what would we think of a tome that would, like a hypothetical tome that would be good for her? Like, she has the card draw, obviously, Old Book of Lore and Encyclopedia Skill Boost. Like, what's another tome we could get that would fill out something she needs?
Healing or horror removal.
Well, how about medical texts?
How about medical text for horror?
Oh, there you go.
Touche.
Yeah,
I'm on board.
Psychological text?
There you go.
What about a really heavy book that gives her, like, she can just like take it and like crack a skull?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, Ian. I have no idea what this hypothetical tome that's yet to be created would do. But I do know this. Whenever I play Daisy, I think I've maybe once to see what happened. Threw down her tote bag. Like, she doesn't need it enough. She does not need it enough.
Okay.
Because really, when it comes down to it, what else do you need other than tomes in your hands?
Maybe that's what it gets down to, is that we need something to go in her hands that's not a tome.
You look at Seeker assets, there really isn't anything that's hand-slotted other than tomes. So maybe we need like a Seeker...
How about the Spirit of Thane?
I don't know, longsword.
Oh, the Spirit of Thane is really good in Daisy. I didn't think about that.
Yeah?
I love that card, by the way.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because you got your magnifying glasses and your tomes, is essentially... And maybe your flashlights, depending on if you're playing on hard.
But do you really need either of those with Daisy, a magnifying glass or a flashlight? Like, flashlight...
Not...
I don't even run those in my Daisy deck.
I run magnifying glasses because they're fast.
Sure.
and I don't really have anything else to put in her hand. Like I usually just want one out, Book of Lore, but just to guarantee those clues. But
all right, so Ian, I have no idea what I want for him, but I feel like Skids has some room for improvement.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just the fact that I think a lot of people consider him the weakest, even though that's arguable, because I think any one you pick for that slot is going to be argued. Thankfully, there's not one clear like
no argument here.
But just the fact he's like definitely held as the lower tier means he has room to grow. But the thing I will say is his base ability is good. Just, actions turn out to be good in this game and to get more of them. And already you can kind of leverage that more so, especially in multiplayer, to just have this like super actiony Skids build. So I think all of that kind of just means that in the future, as we get more cards and more tools for him, he'll be able to turn all those actions into something meaningful. I think one thing that already helps is in Carcosa, the card lockpicks, just in general for all the rogues. Like, if there's one piece rogue really needed, it's investigation help, and they haven't had anything compared to all the other classes.
Yep.
And this is huge. Just a refresher for those in the listening audience. So you basically exhaust lockpicks as 3 uses. You add your agility value to your skill value for the investigation. If you do not succeed by at least 2, remove 1 supply from lockpicks. The good thing is if you do succeed by at least 2, you can keep it and keep using it. So that already turns Skids into a base 7 in Investigate, which is huge.
Lockpicks is huge. Like it might be my... And you're totally right. It's exactly what rogues need for investigation.
Too bad you got to get through that first scenario first.
Yeah. But that's the same thing with like higher ed Daisy, right? Like,
yeah. That first scenario is just touch and go.
Yeah.
Okay. Who else has got one that they think has some room to grow?
I think maybe Zoe.
Go on. Well, as we've discussed, Dunwich in general just means room to grow, but why specifically Zoe?
I'm not sure. I feel like she's so focused on one thing. I'd love to see her as more a roundabout investigator that can also fight well. Do we have a reliable intellect boost for Guardian? I don't think we do.
No. Well, Keen Eye maybe, but I'm not sure how reliable I would call that unless you're swimming in money.
Which she would be more so than the others, naturally.
I suppose. Mm-hmm. Especially once you get those I've had worses.
Yeah.
So maybe
scenario 4 or 5.
Yeah. When I think room to grow, maybe I just think she just needs experience before she really shines.
She's very much like... I like Zoe, but at the same time, she's so focused on just enemy management. And she has trouble, like she deals with the encounter deck, but there isn't much else that she can do just straight out of the gate, other than if you wanted to splash like Mystic into her, which fits pretty well.
Yeah, it's basically her off class.
Right, yeah, but like, other than that, I mean, I don't know, like...
Yeah, I feel like she gets better the more sneaky ways we have to get clues. So I feel like some of her best splash are things like Drawn to the Flame. I don't know if anyone's tried like working a hunch or anything like that, but most of the time when I'm splashing Zoe, I'm splashing ways to get clues. I think I tossed a couple look what I found's in there last time I threw it together too. So I feel like the more sneaky ways, the more flexibility she has in getting clues, the better she's going to get. If you care at all about getting clues, if you're doing a generalist build. If you're just playing multiplayer and she's your monster killer, then...
Yeah, and that's kind of always where I felt fallen with her. Like, to me, Zoe is very much my, like, 3 or 4 player character. When I look at 1 or 2 players, I'm like, I'd rather just play Roland, and just... Because he can do the clues and the monster stuff all in one. I know I've talked about that plenty of times. But, like, she's just so focused on her character card that, to me, that's more of a higher player count thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Zoe is a monster killer, and I think she will get better at the same pace as everyone else does, just as the card pool grows. But I guess I'm having trouble thinking of anything specific that like will take her to a whole nother level.
No, I don't know. I think she's already pretty okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think most of the Dunwich investigators are just pretty okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I know, and I think Jim gets the rap for it just because, as we've mentioned, he's not quite as flashy. Unlike one Mark Harrigan, who is just like, damage cards, more damage cards, skill test, more damage cards. And, I think Mark looks to be pretty interesting, and I feel like he's going to get better and better the more flexible healing we have. Cause
and the more tactic cards we get.
Yeah, that too.
Oh, no.
But, so I've got a build of Mark right now, and I was like, all right, so I'm going to go all in healing, and then I'm just going to draw a bunch of cards, and it's going to be awesome. And I put all the healing he could have in, and I'm like, wow, this isn't actually that much. And I don't like first aid. Why is it in this deck? So I went down to a 1-up on first aid. But anyway, when we have more diverse options, like I feel like eventually we're going to have to get that Guardian Doctor, right? That's going to have to be a thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, would a Doctor be more of a Seeker?
Well, they're in line
Nerdy
with the question, I suppose. The classes are more based on their character motivations more than their abilities, right?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
I don't know the
depends.
story of the Doctor well enough to call it, but I can see it either way.
Or
Anyway,
maybe be like an autopsy doctor. And,
Or a medic.
a pathologist. Is that what a pathologist is? No.
no, that's a study
Coroner.
diseases.
Coroner.
Yeah, coroner.
There we go.
Corner.
Anyway, I think keep an eye on Mark whenever we get a healing card, because Mark just goes, "Yep, I'll take it."
Yeah, I want to like Mark. I haven't actually played him yet, but just the whole like he's Guardian and tactics, and I'm like, well, half the tactics I don't even want to use with him, and like I love Guardian cards, but Guardian cards can't do everything, So it's hard for me to really like get behind Mark as much as I can. Roland. I really didn't want to say Roland again, but
I feel like since clues are the non-negotiable gatekeeper of the game, I feel like Mark's probably the hardest solo investigator we have right now.
Oh, for sure.
Having not
And
tried, but I feel like he sits there.
I think already the Carcosa investigators, a lot of them are kind of rough solo, more so than the core and Dunwich. And Mark is probably the biggest offender, just because 2 intellect and that class is already like locked out of everything except for evidence. Is their only clue gathering stuff, so it's pretty rough. So that's what I was going to say. Is I think for me, his biggest potential for growth is if Guardian gets more clue stuff in the future. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's like when the monster is at your location, it lowers the shroud. I don't know, but there's different things they could do without like just totally bleeding the classes that would help. I think.
Yeah.
I think maybe Safina, like depending on what events show up, I think there might be room to grow maybe into like a super broken build where she can get 5 copies of a certain event, and that event was never meant to have 5 copies in a deck.
For sure. Safina is definitely one. I think she of the new ones, I've played 5 Carcosa games, so 3 with Safina. Safina is the one I've played the most. And yeah, because she's already pretty good, but I can feel like the invisible barriers of not having enough events to choose from to really exploit her potential. Like with another cycle full of events, like I think she's gonna be at another level to what she is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And she's your combo player, right? Like if there's any broken combo that happens between green and purple cards, like Safina's gonna get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and multiple times in a game.
Yes. All right, who else? Who's got some room to grow?
I think, Nick, I know this is your one, but Lola. Like, you want to talk about an investigator that has room to grow.
Scott, I don't know what size she is now.
I like her. I like her a lot. I've played her in like 4 or 5 games. All but one have been true solo. She has like there's a startup there. Like you don't. She doesn't just hit the investigators like with Lola. You very obviously like by turn 2 or 3 you're usually set up to go. But I like her, and the coolest thing is that when any class grows, so does she, potentially. So.
Yeah. Unlimited growth potential.
Yeah, you know how we talked about the Dunwich investigators being above everyone else because they have access to 5 cards?
Exactly. So my wife and I are playing a 2-player... we started our 2-player Carcosa campaign, and she is Min. So I was like, all right, I'll just do the other 3 classes that aren't Seeker or Survivor. Combination, like not one. I would normally have Survivor in, and I would probably also have Seeker in there as well, and then just trade out that 3rd one. But the fact that I'm Guardian Rogue Mystic has made for some very interesting setups. But she is a lot of fun, and I'm very excited to see what else she can do. Especially now knowing that we're going to be getting level 0 cards throughout the campaign. Like, at least we can presumably expect that. Like, that's pretty cool to see that every pack is going to have, like, 10 cards for her. So,
more than my interest in how much Lola's going to grow, I'm interested in how much Lola's going to make me grow as a player. Just trying to get my head around her. Because I'm building the deck. I have a deck set up. I'm actually running her alongside Mark to go through... to go through the Carcosa box. And I've kind of built her to be a little bit more investigaty, a little bit more clovery. And every time I'm looking at a card, I'm like, okay, when am I going to want to use this? And what's the likelihood I will already have the role for this card and in that moment? So, like, my initial thought without going through that thought process was like, all right, I'll have Milan, and we'll make this a scavenging build. And I was like,
well...
oh, wait...
yeah,
that kind of super doesn't work. So just like things like that, just it boggles my mind.
And the thing with Lola is that, like, I think that her, like we talk about, okay, so she's going to grow as every other class does, and that's true to an extent. But like her strength is also her limitation in that you can only play one class at a time. But the beauty of that is that you can play neutrals anytime. So really, my advice to anybody looking to build a Lola deck is take however many neutral skills you would normally take in an investigator, then add like 2 or 3 of them, because they're always going to be usable. Whereas sometimes you'll hit a situation where half of your hand isn't going to work, or even all of your hand isn't going to work. But as long as you have 1 or 2 neutral skills, you can play them regardless. So as we see more neutral cards, Lola's going to get even more powerful, and that's really exciting.
I put I think I'm at like a full 10 or 11 in my deck with the deductions.
Yeah, I started with 12, and then I just cut back from there. I think I'm at 9.
I think I've built about 8 Lola decks, and I'm still not happy with it. Like,
how many have you played, Scott?
1.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I ever since she was released on Arkham DB, like, I'd be at work, have some spare time, like, I'm going to build a Lola deck. And 45 minutes later, I'm like, just sweating, just like, what am I going to cut? How is this going to work? Oh, man. But you're totally right, Sean. Like, the growing as a player... oh boy.
Yeah, like I've already learned things about the game just by trying to build a Lola deck. Like, oh shit, like no, that doesn't interact that way. And oh no, if I'm going to play this card, chances are I would not have gotten into this role first. Like, lucky to me seems so tantalizing. But like, how often are you going to think to switch to Survivor or have the ability to switch to Survivor before that skill test hits where you want to use Lucky? So I went down to 1 of on Lucky just to see if my instinct is correct.
You're probably safe. I will say that one of the worst experiences I've ever had was with Lola, and it was where I play her signature card, which switches a role, and then you draw a card, and then I draw her weakness, which forces me to discard the top card of the deck and switch to that role. And the card I discard is a neutral card, so I'm forced into the neutral class, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is terrible. Yeah. So that wasn't great.
Oh,
but
God, I'm so excited to try her.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun.
You thought Dark Horse had a lot of interesting decision.
Oh, God. Like, I also had the instinct, like, oh, what is Lola Dark Horse? No. My brain cannot take it.
Don't do it.
You're gonna cause a singularity and just destroy the universe right there.
No,
I think I
relatedly.
pretty much have to take that deck and play it. And get that, what's that coat we just saw? The Tattered
Yeah,
Cloak.
the
The tattered cloak, yeah.
Just be 5s pretty much across the board. Whew.
Mm.
Then she'd have 5. Well, she'd be on board with Roland, I guess, for Sanity.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some assets out.
All right. Well, anyone else they want to tag for room for growth or something they're excited to see before they play them, or anything along those lines?
I think Akachi, for similar reasons, that her deck building's pretty limited at the moment, and so as we get more,
But we got our
stuff
first occult card, Ian. We got our first occult card.
that is true, and it'll be interesting to see what the what is it, archaic glyphs or something.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
What that turns into. Hopefully a mystic card, but I as we get more stuff with charges, I think Akachi will get better, and I'm not sure exactly where she's at now because I haven't tried her yet, but I think she's pretty solid probably where she's at, but anything that we get to round her out will be kind of increase her usability, I think.
Well, and that's such a weird distinction for her with her deck building, because are there any cards that use charges that aren't spells?
Not at this point.
Yeah, so it's kind of, at this point, it's
Wait,
kind
hang
of
on.
like...
Is scrying a spell?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's like, so at this point, it's like, or rather, not spells, but mystic cards, and I think they're all mystic cards.
Same.
So, yeah,
All
so it's
spells
like...
are mystic cards.
So right now, it's just like, there's like any of those you're going to be taking anyway, because they're mystic. So it'll be interesting to see if we ever get like a Seeker card with charges on it. That would be really interesting. Or, something like that.
Yeah.
Some other way to play with that part of her deck building. Because otherwise, it just looks like superfluous letters on the back of her card.
Right.
I think she might be along the same lines as Jim, where she's just efficient. Like, so you play your shriveling and you have 5 charges instead of 4.
Oh, yeah.
She's the one. She has 13 stats, I believe, up in the stat lines for the normal 12. Like, she's just ever so slightly better.
Yep.
And she would totally be a great generalist.
Yeah, I agree. She'll be on the defensive line with Jim. They'll just be doing the work while Agnes is like drawing all the attention.
Yeah. Roland's going around shooting guns and look at me, guys. Yeah.
Why'd you have to bring Roland into this? Come on, man.
Because with you. I think William maybe with the recursion of the assets.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Like if there's
the fact
ever
that it says literally any asset, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, just because it's so wide like that, there might be something that will come out later on, and he's able to juggle stuff.
Or
At
how
first, I
about
thought of
any of those like expendable allies that do something cool when they enter play. Like just bam, okay, it takes 2 horror. Okay, kill an enemy. Bam, it's back into play. All right, it takes 2 horror again. All right, back in my discard pile. Just like
but how many of those are in Survivor and Guardian?
none at this point. But maybe that's the way it'll remain.
Yeah. Well, you do, like, I mean, you look at the Guardian side, and there's, like we talked about, Beat Cop and Guard Dog.
Guard dog.
And the ability to use the Guard Dog, use him up, and then bring him back at a later point to use him again. Like, it's, now do you only run 1 Guard Dog instead of 2? Because you can recur it so often. So I think, depending on what assets we get, there could be some cool combos in William.
Well, and we've already seen the Lantern and the Gravedigger's Shovel, which are like they're decent on their own, but in Yorick they're amazing. So
like discard the shovel, get a clue, kill an enemy, grab the shovel.
I think the one thing, having played with him, that I really elevate Yorick would be some kind of, I say resource generation, but I don't think Survivor will ever get that directly, because
Probably
they're
more likely like a cost reduction.
Yeah, exactly. If there's ever some kind of cost reduction thing that lowers the cost of the next asset you play, or whatever the case may be, I think that would take Yorick even further.
What if you've got a partner playing Attorney Urkel? You guys remember Attorney Urkel? I can't remember his real name. I can't remember his real name.
Nelson?
Oh, the Seeker out. I took me so long. I was like, what are you talking about? Attorney Urkel. But yeah, now I remember. I can't remember his name.
If I could remember
I
the
can't
real
remember
name, I would have
anything
used
about
it.
Yeah, what is his ability again? It lowers the cost of...
I think it's the next item.
The next
An
item.
item.
He's in
right.
acquisitions or procurement or something. But yeah, so
Right.
something like that. No, I agree. Yeah, any kind of cost reduction, anything. If we take maybe cues from Netrunner, if we get cards that we already got a Guardian one that lets you play multiple cards with a single action, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what is that? Staying vigilant or something?
Ever
Stay
vigilant.
Stay ever
Yeah.
vigilant.
There you go.
0 cost, 1 XP, 1 at a time, play reducing the resource cost of each by 1.
Yeah, so I feel like everything he gets like that is just going to be awesome.
And he gets that, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
that's an excellent card too, because a lot of survivor assets are really cheap. So to 0 out a card, and it's essentially
It's action
that's-
compression.
yeah, it's insane.
You want to see that on setup.
Hmm.
All right.
It might be a little bit niche, but if it was something like lowering the cost of cards played from your discard pile or something, that would obviously...
That would be only him.
Yeah, yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, I actually want to have this discussion again. I feel like this gets more interesting every time a cycle completes and we have a ton of more player cards. So maybe this is another one we revisit. Who's got room to grow? Or maybe we talk about who did grow. Hey guys, remember
Daisy.
that game I said we were going to play, and then we played the one time where when a new Mythos pack comes out, we say who got the best deal out of it?
Yeah, that was a fun
Well, it's
game.
because the answer was Daisy every time.
It's so true. Well, we should play that again and actually do it, because I feel like that's marking, beat by beat this progression.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, moving on, something I am both jealous and excited to witness. We got our first 5-star review
Oh, God.
where one of us was asked to do an impression. And, oh, man. Oh, Ian, I'm so excited.
Oh, Jesus.
Do you want to lead us up here?
Sure. So the review that was picked is actually for me to read the review as Mark Hamill's Joker. so no surprise, just one of the most iconic performance in history, but no big deal. So I'm gonna try to read through this review as Mark Hamill's Joker, with the caveat that I already said that I'm pretty terrible at impressions. I should probably pull up the person's name so they can get proper credit. Actually, do one of you guys want to do that while I do the review?
Yep, we'll grab it.
Okay.
While you slaughter this review.
Yeah, while I slaughter it is Mark Hamill's Joker. Okay. Hey, kiddies. Do you like laughing in the face of the void? Maybe sacrificing the locals on a bloody altar for speed? Or do you just want to burn your own house to the ground to spite the ghouls within? Then listen to the Mythos Busters. They're a scream!
I loved
That was
it.
pretty good.
And I haven't found the name yet. Where the hell
We
are
will
these out
do
on
that
iTunes?
as we keep going, and then we can
Yeah, there we go.
circle back to it, I'm sure.
Sounds good. Okay, so that leads us straight into a Tentacle Time. Scott, do you want to go first or last?
Why don't we just get me out of the way, because I'm about a minute long, and you guys can go on your GenCon tirade.
Before you go, Scott, real quick, that review was submitted by Viking Battle. I'm guessing that is not his real name or name.
I'm going to guess his real name might be like Sven.
Or if his real name is Viking Battle, that is a badass name.
Yeah. and
Your
his
parents did
are
right
winning.
by you.
Yeah.
But thank you for the 5-star review.
Yes.
Yeah. And please, guys, send more in, because that was fantastic.
I mean, everyone wins, right? You help our metrics. You give us a nice word, which keeps us going. Oh, man, Ian. I was so thrilled. Like, that... I'm so happy right now.
If my kids weren't in bed, I would applaud.
All right, Scott, what you got? What you been up to?
So I've been playing a lot of Hearthstone because I was trying to hit Legend this, which is just insane. I've stopped because I can't. There was a new expansion that came out in the middle of the month. So it's like, imagine you were playing at a regional, and halfway through the regionals, they released a deluxe box.
Ooh.
Like, in the middle of the regional, and everyone's scrambling to figure out what the best deck is, what cards go together. That's been my month in Hearthstone, and it's horrible. So I'm no longer doing that. Maybe next month, though.
That sounds pretty awful.
Yeah. And I also want to just touch on the future of Scott's Ass or SAS or my Solo Arkham series. So I was planning to, like, I had a bunch of days off coming up and stuff. A friend of mine actually had a quite unfortunate accident and is stuck in the hospital for like the next 6 months and has some neurological deficits. So like fingers, hands, all that stuff. And so one of the things, and also a traumatic brain injury. So what I'm going to do instead of doing SAS is I'm actually, on my days off, I'm going to visit him in the hospital and we're going to play Arkham. I'm going to look into maybe videotaping it, or not videotaping it, recording it. So it's like a live SAS, but with a friend. I don't know. Anyways, so maybe, I'm not guaranteeing
I'm just still chuckling at the quaintness of you calling it videotaping.
Yes.
There hasn't been tape involved for years.
I'm going to get this thing on Betamax. So I'm not guaranteeing any of that. So SAS is going to be put on hold for a bit because I'm going to go be a friend and help my friend exercise his brain through more Arkham.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's an acceptable replacement.
Hey, you should let us know when it comes out on Laserdisc.
it's going to be mini disc. Is that what it was? The little square ones.
Oh my god.
The audio format.
Oh, gee.
We'll talk about
UMD, so you can only
formats.
play them on your PSP.
Damn it, Sony. They can't help themselves. Oh, what? Everyone else in the industry's already decided? Nope. Own format.
Yeah. So, yeah,
That
that's
was my impression
my
of
Tentacle
Sony.
Time.
All right. Well, guys, we went to GenCon. Nick, it was your first time at GenCon.
It was.
5-word review.
5-word review.
All right, you're done.
That was 3.
You got 2 more.
All right. 5-word review. I can't believe that. Oh, shoot.
We believe in you.
I can't.
Wait, does can't count as 2? No, contraction. Yeah, so Gen Con was amazing. Do we want to talk maybe about Labyrinths first? So that way,
Sure.
the most salient bit is up front.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Labyrinths. Labyrinths.
So good.
So before we go into our non-spoiler discussion about Labyrinths, I'm going to advise, and I know this is a big ask. We talked about this with Scott before we started the show. I'm going to talk to all of you now, and this is something I ask with you all in mind. If at all possible and feasible, go on lockdown regarding this scenario. Find out nothing if you can until you're able to try it in epic multiplayer mode, because that experience at Gen Con, like. I was worried that it was all just new and shiny, and I was kind of in the moment. But like the more I sit on it, the more I'm like, that was probably my best gaming experience at any Gen Con. I'm gonna put that one on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Oh, sorry, Nick. Did you say something?
I was agreeing with you that was my best gaming experience at Gen Con. I will say that despite there being, like, if you, for whatever reason, happen to get a hold of a copy of the scenario before you're able to play it in Epic Multiplayer, it does come with variant rules, like 3 or 4 different variant rules to allow for other ways to play it beyond the 12-player experience. So while the 12-player experience is the best way to do it, in my opinion, you do have options if that isn't something that's readily available to you, including like a mini campaign, which is really intriguing to me.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
basically the premise, and to kind of wrap it into what Luke. Oh, why did I say Luke? What
Luke.
what Nick is saying.
Luke.
I don't ask me, man.
I don't even have a response to that.
I don't even have an explanation. So what Nick was saying, so the premise is the 3 groups of investigators, however sized they are. You could do this with 6 people, 2 in each group. Each group is basically in an alternate reality of the same place. And the interaction between the realities is what really did this for me, and is really the reason why I would advise everyone just like go on lockdown, because if you have your first experience with this, like I did, it's oh god, it was so good. I don't know what I can say without going into particulars, but
Yeah, I would just reiterate that. I know Matt Newman himself popped on our Discord shortly before and was kind of advising the same thing. And part of me in my head is like, yeah, okay. Because sometimes I'm kind of lackadaisical with spoilers, like if I get spoiled, it's fine. I'll still enjoy something. But in this case, he was 100% right. I went in completely just naked. Not in reality, but
no, he did. It's true.
Yeah, that's how I like to play
Listeners,
all my
it's
games
true.
at Gen Con.
That was the real Arkham world.
Yeah.
Hope
I like
you
to
don't grab the tentacle.
I like to keep my body slot free, so keep that body slot open. You never know. But yeah, part of the experience is just being able to just not know what's going on and just experience everything fresh for the first time. So yeah, just keep it secret, keep it safe as long as you can. But yeah, I would agree. I bet this is my 4th Gen Con, I think 4th, 5th. I don't remember anymore. But
I'm on
of
4th,
those,
so you must be 5th.
okay, yeah, this was the pinnacle, which is saying a lot as far as gaming experiences. It was so good, knocked it out of the park for sure.
And
Yeah, I was lucky enough that I got to do it twice, and my second one was with Ian and Sean and a listener and friend of the show, Josh. And even though that was my second playthrough, like there were still new things for me. Despite playing in the same group and playing in basically the same setup I had the first time, there was still aspects of it that were vastly different. So that's really cool.
And I loved how Matt took to our Discord and was announcing as people died and were eliminated from the scenario. I thought that was particularly fun.
Those
Yes.
updates were fantastic.
Someone on our Discord had suggested that he should have the cannon from home.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, nice one, Scott. Yeah, I could just imagine at Gen Con with just a little holographic picture popping up over their table.
So, God, what else do you say without getting into spoilers? Oh yeah, so I suppose one other thing to say is we had the opportunity to sit down with Matt Newman and talk to him a little bit about the scenario. Although with the way timelines work, that'll probably have been released already, in which case you'd have gotten to the spoiler that I'm going to put at the front of that episode, and you will have already not have decided to listen to it. But yeah, I thought that interview was really cool to sit down and kind of talk to Matt. He talks about kind of the premise behind some of the characters, kind of how the idea coalesced in general, and I thought it was really interesting to peek behind the curtain. So not to encourage more people to not do more things, but don't listen to that until you've played it either.
Jeez.
One of the cool things that I can say without spoiling is just, this is the second cooperative LCG. So the first co-op LCG, Lord of the Rings, has been doing Gen Con experiences, which have been a lot of fun, mostly. But one of the things that was interesting this year is I really didn't know what to expect from Arkham because it's a whole nother game. And just knowing how Matt, as a designer, likes to really mess with people's heads, I was like, what is he going to do for this one? So I just enjoyed that experience of just like that whole nother level of, because I knew there was something special going on that also added to the anticipation of like, what exactly are we going to be going through?
Play it in Epic multiplayer if at all possible. If not, then I don't know, I haven't tried it solo yet. I can't speak to that experience. It's probably still an awesome scenario, but man, I don't know. Arkham Knights is going to be awesome, and FFG is going to be completely unprepared for how many people are going to want to come do that at Arkham Knights.
Yeah.
But that's another story. So, guys, any other thoughts on Labyrinths of Lunacy in the non-spoiler view? I'm sure we'll get to talking about it in spoilery capacities much later on.
Maybe not about the scenario itself, but just from talking with various FG people, I think if it wasn't already obvious to everyone, this game is doing really, really well, which is good news.
Okay, so, boys, let's talk about Gen Con en general. So, Nick and I had the opportunity, like I mentioned last episode, to actually be driven down to Indianapolis in a conversion van. And that was amazing. Definitely the best the best traveling experience I've had to Gen Con. We were joined by our friend Dave, who is not here tonight. Aw, I miss Dave.
Oh, Dave.
Although my favorite discussion that we had, Nick, was which Game of Thrones character are you? Because I feel like the only thing I contributed to that conversation was nailing you with Ned.
And I totally I was fighting for Davos just because that was the only character that came to mind. Like, I like Game of Thrones, but I don't know it terribly well, so I was just like, Davos. And then Brian was like, yeah, but can you read? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's true.
That is such a Brian
That was
comment.
the determinant.
But yeah, I think Ned was a pretty solid assertion. So good job with that one, sir.
All right, so we show up. Our buddy Brandon's already in fine form. I think the tapping party is kind of a fun place to start. But unfortunately, we didn't make it there in time. Ian, you flew in, is that right?
I did fly in. No real interesting stories there other than just being sandwiched in like usual. Although I did think it was funny on the flight back, because they're so used to all the nerds by that point. You know, they do the usual spiel, like put your laptop out, any like metal, and then they're like, oh, any cards. so they had me put all these cards in a separate bin.
Please store your deck boxes in the upright position.
So I bring out my big old quiver of cards.
Oh, we never touched quivers, Ian. Aw.
We did not, no.
We had plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, there was plenty. Touched many other things, but not quivers, unfortunately.
So Thursday rolls around, and none of us decided to wade through the FFG line, which ultimately I think we all thought in the moment that meant we were foregoing a chance at Carcosa.
Oh, yeah. That's totally what I thought.
But oddly enough, FFG did not immediately sell out of Carcosa. So I didn't stand in line, but I was able to find the end of the line later in the day and grab a ticket which held a copy of Carcosa, which was pretty
I think
awesome.
It might have helped that they were limiting it to one per person, I believe, where in past years you could get two.
Yeah.
So that might have helped.
And good on them for that, because
Yeah.
when I was able to grab it, I was so very happy. It's nice because I like to rag on FFG for not being logistically very adept, but they did right by me in that regard, so I can't complain.
I really lucked out because I got the ticket, and so I didn't have to stand in line for it either, because then Dave was going in anyway, so I just gave him my ticket, and I was like, oh, well, if you can. So, like, where I thought I wasn't going to get anything, turns out I did the same amount of work and got exactly what I wanted, so that was nice.
Avoiding the FFG line was
Oh.
Save so much time for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The only downside is we didn't actually Carcosa together because we all forgot that you need core encounter sets to play the things.
Even beyond that, I feel like everyone had the same thought this year. Like, oh, everyone else will bring the scenarios.
Yeah.
So no one brought any scenarios, which was particularly fun for our meet and play. We had to get a little creative there. But Thursday, Ian, you and I had the opportunity to sit down and play a little Lord of the Rings, much to our delight and
go?
chagrin.
That was a scenario with cards.
It was developed for a type of player that's not my type. Oh man, I was really salty in the moment. Because there's nothing more fun about a card game that just says, hey, you can't play any of the cards in your deck.
Yeah, it was rough. Those Lord of the Rings Gen Con quests are usually pretty hard, and that was maybe the hardest, at least in 4-player.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to be willing to say that unqualified. Whew, God, that was rough. Although it was nice that later in the weekend, even though Ian and I had both repeatedly been stomped by it, and I had basically sworn never to play it again, we decided to play it in non-epic multiplayer and just 2-player, and we put up the W.
Yeah, I was thinking about that was actually like so needed because I did the math in my head, and I actually played that 6 times throughout Gen Con. Granted, maybe half of those were like 1 or 2nd turn scoops, but
that's Lord of the Rings.
But that's still a healthy chunk of my Gen Con time. So if I would have gone through Gen Con getting the W, I think there would have been a little bit of bitterness inside of me. So the fact that we joined our forces and defeated it made me feel like at peace with my Gen Con.
Agree. It was needed closure because man, I was salty after the first couple times I tried that scenario. It's like, okay, what cards do I play, Caleb? Waiting. Scott, you'll love that one, I think. It's stupid hard.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So, anything else notable happened on Thursday? I feel like that was just kind of a dealer hall day for the most part.
I played my first game of Labyrinths of Lunacy with Kenji.
Oh, right.
The maker of those wonderful bags, and I got one. I got a Chaos bag from him that day as well, which is pretty navy blue with a golden hashtag not yellow sign embroidered on the front of it. That will be available for people to order. So that was a lot of fun playing through it the first time. We got wiped out. Like our 4-player team just got decimated during Labyrinths of Lunacy. And I may have leveraged that experience in the next play that I did of it, but it was still a lot of fun despite all 4 of us getting killed pretty quickly.
Nick, question. Was anyone in that group playing Agnes?
No. Honestly, don't remember. I remember I was my 47 experience Roland, but Agnes was not the reason that we all died.
Oh well, but we won and we played with Agnes, so I'm seeing a correlation here.
I wish I could make the argument about Roland, but because I was in both games, I just straight up can't.
You got mad.
So you got it. Maybe it was because of Marie. I've never played with Marie before, and true. Josh really did some crazy stuff with Marie. So
yeah, she was skillfully piloted.
Who am I kidding? I was awesome because I've had worse into shotgun. Like that was phenomenal. Anyway, so that first game was a lot of fun, and that was on Thursday. But yeah, other than that, it was just a dealer hall, just walking around, seeing what's up.
Yeah, there were some interesting things going on. Any standout games that you guys want to throw a mention to? I suppose my it's kind of become a thing now. I don't branch out very often. I'll play just about anything, but it takes something special to get me to buy a game that's not one of the card games I'm into. Just about every Gen Con, I end up with like this weird impulse buy that ends up paying off. Last year it was Grimslingers.
Yeah.
And this year I just happened upon, it was the first place I decided to stop on Thursday morning, a little game called Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Card Game. And being a massive Scott Pilgrim fan, I was like, well, I must own this now. So I bought it completely. I had never heard of it before, sight unseen. I bought it purely on the license. And when we cracked it out, I was a little worried because we had to wade through the rulebook a little bit, which maybe isn't the best thing to do while you're trying to play. But once we got it rolling, I really liked how it played, so I'm excited to get that to the table again.
Yeah, definitely. On that Thursday morning, I was kind of wondering. I wanted to hit up the Vengeance demo, which I mentioned on the podcast before because I kickstarted it. It's kind of like a Kill Bill themed, like revenge movie where the first part of the game, your character gets dealt like a broken arm and injuries to represent them getting beat up, and then you spend the rest of the game trying to get revenge. So I wanted to go over there and demo it. before my copy gets there, and that was a lot of fun. But on the way, I saw the Scott Pilgrim game, and I was like, I should tell Sean about that. and then attacked by guard dog.
Sorry,
it's okay. And then I run into Sean, and he happens to be holding Scott Pilgrim in his arms. So I was like, okay. But yeah, I like that game a lot. I didn't know too much about like playing the game. I had seen half of the movie and not read any of the comic books, but I still like the game because I think it's, even without the theme, it's just like a solid constructed game with like these double-sided cards, and kind of add some interesting new quirks to like the whole deck builder thing.
Yeah, that was what was interesting about it to me. It was the first deck builder, or probably first card game that I've ever seen where every card in the game is double-sided. So each one has kind of like a utility and then a combat version on the other side. And just like the movies and the graphic novels are actually, or would we call them graphic novels? I don't know how those are actually categorized. They look like manga. But they just paid great homage to old school video games. Like basically the combat, what you do is you either button mash and you just chuck cards for 1 damage per card, or you can string together combos based on the character you're playing, and each combat card has a button direction on it. So if you string together combos, you can do bonus damage, and it's so fun. I have it staring me in the face right now, and I kind of just want to play it.
Yeah, they sold out of it, but I pre-ordered my copy, and it actually encouraged me to. I watched the whole movie, and I started reading the books now.
And they are great, by the way. Ian, we generally like the same thing, so I'm going to assume you're pretty okay into them. But if anyone else, it's one of Edgar Wright's finest movies, and the books are great too, because honestly, they're a really good the movie is a fantastic just adaptation of the books. Any other games you guys saw and were interested in or tried and didn't fly with?
I know I ogled the Thing all day today.
Yeah, a lot of
Thing. We finally
ogling.
got to play it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a disappointing moment because we were like, oh okay, because our friend Brandon that I was hanging out with and we were rooming with also is a big Thing fan, as we all are. So we're like, all right, well, if we don't play the Thing together at GenCon, it's GenCon failed. So we go over and we stalk the people who are currently playing the demo, thinking that, like, a lot of the demos, just like you wait around and you are the next people to sit down. And sadly, that was not correct. That might be my saddest moment at GenCon this year. When so they start getting up. And Nick, was it you who got the first indication that things were not right with what we were doing? Or was it Chad? No, Nick went on mute. Yeah, so basically we're like starting to sidle down, and she's handing out the swag to the people who are getting up. And Nick's like, oh yeah, we can do this next. He's like, oh no, you have to sign up for it. So we asked the girl, oh, where do you sign up? She's like, oh, we're booked up. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I know when you broke that news to me, I was really... Basically, there wasn't, compared to past Gen Cons, there wasn't a ton of stuff I was looking out for other than like what I go for, which is Arkham and Lord of the Rings. It was pretty much I wanted to demo Vengeance and I wanted to demo the Thing, so I was like, we're not even going to get a chance to demo it.
As luck would have it, though, we had a man on the inside who was able to get us signed up for... Did we do that on Saturday?
Yeah, it was Saturday.
Yeah. So, all ended well. Okay, so moving on to Friday. God, I'm trying to think of anything else notable that happened on Friday. We didn't play Labyrinth till Saturday.
We ate lots of hamburgers. I think that was Friday.
That's true. My other podcast, Cardboard of the Rings, had our listener event on Friday. Oh yeah, God, okay, hang on, let's back that up. I didn't fully process everything that went with what you just said. So it's become a tradition. My friend Brandon is kind of a meathead. I'll just put that out there. Or he's become a meathead. Let's go with that. He has convinced me successfully the past 2 years to go do a CrossFit workout. I mentioned last time the art that Nick pulled for our custom cards. Well, that's where that came from, and that is literally the last time I lifted a weight. But somehow he managed to convince me, and Friday morning, bright and early, he nudges me awake, and he said he was almost going to leave me because we were out late the night before. I got up like a champ, got in there. There was one other dude in that class. We basically got private instruction. But oh my god, I got destroyed. And immediately afterward, as again is tradition, we went to Steak and Shake to do the yearly 7x7 challenge.
Yeah.
Which was a lot harder this year than I remember it being last year.
Yeah, for some, it's not even like it's just these layers of like, you can see it on our Facebook page. We posted some GenCon 2017 photos, and I posted one of the actual burger. It's just these layers of American cheese that are just like as you eat it, you can feel it just like lining your arteries.
It's not so much melted on the burgers as it is kind of like coagulated.
Yeah, it's like the glue that holds it together. But the fun part of it was we had 6, and then a 7th person came in and joined us. So we had the 7x7 quartet going.
So for anyone who doesn't know, because actually this is probably the first time we've ever mentioned it on this podcast, the 7x7 is a burger that they serve at Steak and Shake, which is 7 patties, 7 slices of cheese, and 7 opportunities of greatness. So we did that, and oh man, that was a brick. I did not want to move for ever after that. I still don't know if I've recovered. I'm still sweating grease as we speak.
Sorry, I had to step away with a feverish child. Are we talking about what are we on now?
We're talking about the 7x7. You were
the one that I missed.
Yeah, you were having lunch.
Yep.
A more reasonable.
Yeah. I met a friend and a fellow writer who lives locally, so we had lunch together. Have we talked about Dragonfire yet?
No, but now seems a perfect time. Tell us,
okay,
Nick, regale us with the tale of Zale.
I will regale the tale of Zale. So, we're walking around, and who saw it? One of us saw it. The new Dungeons and Dragons themed deck builder, or not deck? Yeah, it is a deck builder.
Yeah, it's like an adventure card game.
Right, kind of. So the 5 of us sat down to play, and we get our classes all set up, and the guy who's running the demo is this kid. He looks like quote unquote. He looks like he's maybe 21, 22. His name is Zale, and he's just like, okay, so have you guys played?
Hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast. If not,
we're gonna get a 1-star iTunes.
If not, Zale or any of Zale's loved ones, the story we tell is in jest. He became the hero of our GenCon. So.
Yeah. So he goes, first thing he says is, have any of you guys played Shadowrun Crossfire? To which all 5 of us answer no. And immediately his eyes roll and this sigh is kind of loosed from his body, like, okay, I'm in for it now. And meanwhile, we're all like, well, just teach us the game. So it turns out that Dragonfire is this game where you play a character and you play cards from hand to match combat icons on the monster that you're facing, and then when you defeat the monster, you get a gold reward, and that's pretty much the whole game. You just repeat that 4 or 5 times. So I wasn't a big fan of the mechanics, like as we're going through it, because it was very like I wanted it like another layer. I wanted something else to be doing other than just play cards, kill monsters. And there might be, like, there's going to be expansions and stuff, but it wasn't my game to begin with, so my experience was already kind of, like, a little off. And then we had the wonderful Zale, who, suffice it to say, wasn't invested in demoing it for us.
He just wanted to be anywhere else in that moment.
Oh, yeah.
He must have been hungry, or his I don't know, maybe he had a girlfriend who was off cosplaying somewhere, and he just wanted to be there. I mean, and who could blame him in that case? But boy, he just he was not he was not that interested in being there in that moment. My favorite part though was when Brandon killed a monster. God, I will never forget this. Brandon kills a monster, and Zale goes, "Oh, all right, you killed a monster. That means you get gold." He leans back in his chair, grabs a scoop of the gold tokens, and starts just chucking them in players' general play areas, going, "Yay!"
was quite the experience.
It was amazing. And I didn't realize what I was looking at when. Like, I wish I could watch it all again.
When it was all happening, we're all just sitting there like, is this really going on? And like, we're looking at our character sheets, like trying to just like awkwardly let it happen. And just, and then literally from then on, like literally the rest of the con, we kept referencing back to it, and we kept doing the yay and just like acting just uninvested in whatever we're doing. It was, Zale
that was
will
the most
forever live
told
on.
story of Gen Con.
Yes, it was.
That's my advice for Gen Con, is just sit random. I feel like the best stories are always from these random demos, especially the bad ones.
Yes. Agreed. So then, moving on to Saturday, we played Labyrinth, and it was amazing. And, oh God, Saturday was the one where we got up and we're like, oh shit, our entire day is scheduled, isn't it? So what did we have? So we had Labyrinth right away in the morning at 9. That lasted us almost all the way up till 1 after we got done with our interview with Matt.
Yep.
From there, we went to... We had to eat.
And then we went to the thing.
The thing.
Oh, that's right. Then we got in with the thing. And, oh, man, that game was everything I wanted it to be.
It's good.
I will be buying that game when it comes out. Faux show.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I was surprised that everyone was playing as, like... defensively as they were. Like we had at least one, well, we had 3 infected by the end of it because I ousted everybody, but it was surprising that none of the infected, and you guys you both were infected, so you might be able to speak to this, but nobody was like sabotaging the missions. Everybody was just playing into it.
I didn't get infected until we re-upped mid-game, so I can't speak to what these slackers were doing in the early game.
Yeah, I was infected from the beginning. I can tell you the demo person who is actually good, unlike some other demo person.
Yes, she did a fantastic job.
But she went through, relatively quickly, as you have to with a demo, like the 4 victory conditions for the imitations, which I was from the start. And the only thing that stuck in my head was, if you make it to the helicopter as the imitation, you win. So I'm like, okay, I'll just play it cool and get into the helicopter, not knowing any of the other mechanics.
That by playing it cool, it makes it harder for you to get on the helicopter.
Yeah, I didn't know that part. And also, I was like, well, I kind of want to ask her how the imitations win, but I can't, because then I just broadcast to the world that I'm an imitation. So I was like, just play it cool, Ian. Just play it cool.
It was really funny because it got to the point where, like, anytime something was suggested, or anytime I'd say something, because Ian was sitting right next to me, so anytime I'd say something to Ian about another player, he'd just kind of like give me this little half shrug, and he wouldn't ever say, like, he maybe said a couple words the whole game, but he was just so quiet and just like, well, like, gave me this look like, I don't know, maybe you're right, Nick, or maybe you're wrong, like, oh, I don't know. And I was like,
well, Ian's normally pretty thoughtful, but
Sure. Well, you got to remember, I first met Ian like face to face at Gen Con, so I don't have the repertoire that you probably do.
Yeah, so one thing I really remarked about that game is it was far closer, because I knew social deception had to be a core element, right? But I wasn't sure with the board and the minis, like, how, like, deep it was going to get, and I worried that it was going to become too much of, like, a minis game with the trader element tacked on, but I felt like it was actually way more probably casual friendly, like closer to the Resistance than I expected. Like, it's the Resistance, except that when you go on a mission, you play a mini game where there's
actually a mission.
Yeah, and you get these cool items like a flamethrower
or the rope. The rope was the best, because you can use rope when someone would become the leader and tie them up and prevent them from becoming the leader.
And the opposite side of the rope card was the couch.
It's so awesome. They did such a good job of that game.
If you're a fan of that movie, that is, like, it was everything I wanted it to be, and I cannot wait to bring that home, because I do think it's light enough that I can probably play that with most people I play games with.
Yeah.
I think so. I think definitely that's one that I'm going to be picking up, and it will be hitting the table frequently.
All right, so then from the thing, we had like a brief moment of respite, and then we went into the first, hopefully annual, Mythos Busters listener event.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it was fun. I thought it went really well for a first event. I think we had probably close to, 25, 30 people show up?
Think so,
Yeah, it was around there.
And more people swing by because they had conflicts or whatever. Ian, do you want to preamble or reveal what our swag was this year? For those who don't follow the Facebook.
So we unveiled our swag, which we had been teasing here and there, and we decided for this year we were kind of thinking about what kind of things can we add to the game. People are always talking in the Pimp Your Game channel in our Discord about stuff like what could actually be useful for people to use. And so at a certain point, we were throwing out stuff like. Well, I won't throw out all the stuff in case it turns out to be future swag.
God damn it! That's why FFG does this.
there were ideas, and eventually we settled on action trackers. That's something that doesn't come with the base game, and so kind of looking through the different options. I decided, having a strong rogue bent to me, that wouldn't it be cool if we had some poker chip action trackers with our logo on it? And so that's what we ultimately settled on.
How convenient for you. But they turned out great, so no foul, no foul cried. I thought they worked really well. I thought the size came out fine. We had a little bobo with production in that the whole point of the action trackers is it double-sided. So it's green, nice bright green on one side for an unused action, and then gray or silver on the other side for a used action. We got 300 some of the non-grade ones, so they were green on both sides. That was a panic moment, but luckily we had a great customer service. Wow. Yeah. Customer cervix. That happened. We'll just pause for a second and appreciate that. Customer service experience, and they made it right. So, yeah, I thought they turned out really well, and I think people dug them. We have a few extra sets, which I think we're probably going to use for giveaways, so pay attention to the podcast, of course, and the Facebook page, wherever we unveil that. And hopefully we'll give a few of those out in the future, because I thought they turned out extremely well.
Yeah,
I agree.
Just feel of poker chips, and I've had to stop myself this whole episode from fondling them because they're so sitting right next to my microphone. So
it's been every inch of your being resisting playing with them, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But now they are in my hands, so as we talk about them.
Clickety click, clickety click. All right. So then from the listener event, then we bled straight into Cardboard of the Rings After Dark, to which all Mythos Busters listeners were invited. And oh man, that gathering gets bigger and more fun by the year. We're gonna start to bleed out of those basement rooms that they've been giving us at the Slippery Noodle.
Yeah.
So basically, this is something we do for my other podcast, and since I'm the one who sets it up every year, now that I'm done with that podcast, we'll be doing it for this one as well.
Yay!
In years going forward. So basically, we have a listener, Patrick. What up, Patrick? Who hooks us up every year. He has a family inn at the Slippery Noodle, which is the oldest restaurant in Indy. And we get to rent out the basement, and we basically just get it. We get private servers, and we get beers and games, and it's just a great time to mingle and have fun. Like,
yeah,
no one really brings the heavy games that crowd generally is playing throughout the con. So this is like when Codenames gets busted out, or frickin' Cobra Paw, or
Cobra Paw,
Happy Trout, Happy Salmon,
Slippery Trout, yeah.
Slippery Trout. So just all these party games, and people are having drinks and having fun. Like Caleb Grace, who develops Lord of the Rings, stopped by. Nate French stopped by, which was cool. He was a last-minute invite that was like, oh my god, we haven't even invited Nate French. I like to at least invite the devs. And I went up to him thinking like, oh, there's no way he's going to accept. So we gave him some swag. And I'm like, oh yeah, hey Nate, yeah, if you want to come have a beer, there's this thing. He's like, oh, yeah, I might come to that. I'm like, oh, well, all right. And it was cool because that's a meta joke for my other podcast, so we could tease him coming and everyone would doubt us. He showed up way earlier than I expected, so we didn't get to build any to build any suspense. So yeah, God, After Dark is so fun. We'll definitely be doing that
It
next year.
is.
So if you are at GenCon, plan for After Dark, which we normally do on Saturday nights. Though next year we might move it to Friday, because in order to do After Dark, I had to miss karaoke with the Thrones players.
Oh,
It was a regrettable decision to have to make. I would make the same decision again, but if I don't have to make that decision between After Dark and karaoke, oh shit, we should do karaoke at After Dark.
I was saying, why don't just do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Problem solved.
Well, here
Yep.
we go. We'll workshop it and see what comes out for next year.
I think we just workshopped it.
Yeah, it's definitely always the like perfect combination of Gen Con though. Like just just it's always kind of a sad moment to say goodbye to everyone, but so it's nice to have that like big final shindig together.
Yeah, because we were out at the Noodle till like 2, I think.
Mhm.
And Ian, you took
was after
out.
2.
You basically went straight to the airport, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I had a 6 a.m. flight, so by the time I got back to my motel, it was like 2:30, 2:45. So I just went there, and I didn't get any sleep that night. So
And we
still
all
recovering.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, and then we all went back to the hotel, and we were up until almost 5, which I was surprised then that I was still able to get up at like 9 to get on the ride to go back to the convention center after that.
God, that Sunday morning was rough. Sean got a little sauced on Saturday night and didn't hydrate afterward. But yeah. So, then we went back to the con for a little bit on Sunday, and it was not nearly as unbusy as I wanted it to be, because normally Sunday everyone's going home, and everyone in the dealer hall is trying to offload their stock, so there's usually deals and discounts and what have you. But this year it felt like it was just as busy as any other day, which was uncomfortably busy. So, Gen Con, final thoughts? Scott, are you still with us?
I am. I've been listening.
Whoa, what a trooper!
Yeah. I don't know if I really want to go. I don't like crowds.
Yeah,
and
that's going to be a rough sticking point.
It's so fun though, Scott. I hate crowds too, but
yeah, maybe one day we'll see.
Some year.
Yeah.
Some year.
Yeah.
Well, and other than like walking the dealer hall and all that, like once you sit down and play something,
yeah,
then the crowds just kind of melt away. Other than the fact that you have to compete with the volume, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I mean, once you find a group or find whatever your event you're going to, and you sit down for those 2, 3, 4 hours, I at least didn't even notice the crowds. So
It wasn't as bad as I expected it to be this year. It was
Right.
still the
Yeah.
worst it's ever been, but given that they've never sold out before, I expected it to be a bit worse.
right.
So hopefully the con will continue to grow into its population, but I have a feeling that's not going to be the case, because the event lottery system is such a janky ass system, and I have a feeling there's going to be a year where I don't get into anything, and then at that point I'm like, well, why am I going to Gen Con?
Well, I just did it this one year, and I can tell you I'm not looking forward to having to do that again next year.
Right.
Like, it's to the point where I'm like, well, like, I know I'm on the podcast, but how much do I have to go to the Arkham event? But I would kick myself if I had missed Labyrinths of Lunacy, so I will definitely be at least trying.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been to a few Gen Cons, and this is up there for one of the best, if not the best. Yeah, it was awesome.
And by using Sean's logic, this is your first Gen Con with me, so that would mean that I guess I helped make it the best Gen Con.
Flawless logic. Flawless.
Yep.
So, hey, I think Justin just joined us. Hey, Justin. So if you were at Gen Con, we'd love to see your picks. We put out our own album out on our Facebook page, so if you've got any picks you took, especially if you happen to see us or be hanging out with us, any of the guys that we met or gals, feel free to post those to our page. We're happy to share those as they come out, and God, I hope to see more people at Gen Con. It was really cool to put faces to usernames.
Yes. I think someone suggested having name tags. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's not a terrible idea. So Gen Con was amazing. Nothing really else to say there. In the meantime, I have been just recovering. Like, I literally, this afternoon, almost a week after we've gotten back from Gen Con, was the first game of anything that I played. I popped down some Lord of the Rings. But I did build a bunch of decks when I was sleeving things. So I've got a Lola and a Mark ready to go.
Yeah, it usually takes me a while to get all game, but I rebounded quickly because Carcosa was there waiting to play it, and I needed to tackle it. So
I'm excited to dive in.
Yep.
I'm finishing up a core set campaign with my sister and her boyfriend have recently moved closer to me, so we're actually gaming together again. And I had the brilliant idea. Sorry, complete tangent from what we were talking about, but I had the brilliant idea. So we beat the Gathering, we beat Midnight Mass, and I'm like, all right, guys. So now this is generally where we decide: do we want to just finish the campaign, or do we want to do any side scenarios? So they thought that both Rougarou and Carnival sounded fun. Little did they know that I would have the brilliant idea that we should play them both in one night.
The two longest scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was up till 2 a.m. on a Thursday. Thursday immediately following Gen Con. Just prolonging the con haze.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we beat him, and it was fun. We got all the masks, and my sister's a werewolf now, so that's pretty cool. But anyway, looking forward to diving into Carcosa. I'm actually really looking forward to trying out Labyrinth's solo now, just to compare the experience. Because there's no way it's going to compare, but I imagine it's still going to be a pretty decent scenario.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for things we have on this episode, guys. Ian, any parting shots before we go?
No, other than I've gotten some very positive reviews from. Thank you to everyone who's reached out, because as a creator of anything, it always helps to get some good feedback from that. So thanks for playing it.
Excellent. Scott?
Nope, none for me.
Okay.
Nope.
He checked out a while ago. Understand.
I really did.
Nick, how about you?
I do, just jumping back to Gen Con real quick, I do just want to say that we were lucky enough to be gifted a review copy of a game called Fire of Eidolon, gifted from the developer of that game, Ian Stedman, by way of Kenji. He was the one that kind of hooked us up with it. I ended up grabbing it since I knew that I'd be able to get it to hit the table pretty often between my wife and I. I've played a couple games so far. There's a lot of content in that one box. There's a lot of different ways to play the game. I played the base game twice, and it's fun, but I'm really excited to try out some of the other stuff they have going on in it before I actually give my full final thoughts and actually type up a review for the website and everything. But it is fun, but there's so much to it that I'm not ready to quite say exactly how I feel quite yet. So
awesome. Well, I'm interested, because the whole aesthetic of that game was ultimately appealing to me, but I did have no problem giving that to you, knowing that you'd get it to the table sooner. But I definitely want to hear how it goes, because that whole, it almost kind of looked like it's kind of like old school Final Fantasy, right? Like SNES era Final Fantasy is kind of the aesthetic.
I would liken it more to Legend of Zelda, but yeah, SNES is really what for, and because you lay map tiles in the dungeon, each map tile looks like a screen from the old Legend of Zelda games where it's top down in the dungeon and all that. So it really pulls on that SNES aesthetic, which is a huge win for me. But yeah, there's so much to it, and I've only scratched the surface so far.
Cool. Well, I look forward to hearing an update on a future Tentacle Time. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us on this episode then. As I always mention, if you've got comments or just want to suggest a discussion topic for us, please do so. Call us on the Mythos Busters hotline at 203-493-MYTH. That's 203-493-6984. Hopefully, once the summer craziness dies down, we'll get some Miskatonic AV clubs back out there. Again, leave us some 5-star reviews, or any reviews. We'll take them. But however, if you leave a 5-star review and an impression you'd like to hear from a host, we will read it on the show, and Sean can be happy again. All right, so that wraps it up for episode 22 of Mythos Busters. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.